So in this video, we'll take a closer look at this router here from ASUS. This is the ROG Rapture GT-AXE16000. So as of this video, this is the latest and greatest you can get from ASUS and also from the Wi-Fi 6E standard, even though Wi-Fi 7 have been announced and also ASUS have announced some of the routers that it's going to replace this one here. I have some issues with my current router, so I'm not really in the position where I wanted to wait even further, and I've been following this for quite some time. Price has not really come down all that much, unfortunately, so it still is very expensive router. So I hope it's all worth it. In terms of where I'm coming from the GT-AXE16000, so the first generation Wi-Fi 6 router from ASUS. This one here, I do get two 10 gigabit ports, which I really would like to have, and also get that fourth band for Wi-Fi 6E. So this is a quad band router. You have two 5 gigahertz bands and one 6 gigahertz band, and also of course 2.4 gigahertz as well. I do have several like Wi-Fi 6E devices, mostly just smartphones and my tablet devices. I don't believe I have more as of yet, and I don't think like Wi-Fi 6E was adopted all that well throughout the years or ever since it was announced. Really, we have seen some products here and there, but it's not really become the new standard. Wi-Fi 6 still seems to be the most used standard still as of this video. But anyways, I'm like said having issues with my current router. I accidentally broke up one of the antennas. I did super glue it where I kind of screw it on to the router, but sometimes I just have fallout from my signal, or my signal just fall out completely, and it's just so annoying. Easy solution, of course, is to get a new antenna for that one, but I have to order that off China, and right now it's Chinese New Year, so it will probably be more than a month before I'll get that. So anyways, nice excuse to get one of these big boys here. Come to this very big box here, kind of surprised me a little bit. Very big and heavy box, and nicely illustrated. You can see, of course, the router here in the front. One of course, the nice benefit of a ROG router is that nice ROG logo there that is RGB as well. And it has like this infinity kind of design to it, where you have this mirror where you can look into it and kind of see almost like 3D logo, and also very mirror finish here on the top. I'm not really a big fan of that aesthetics, but of course this will just go onto a shelf. I will not really notice it, and I will just turn off all of the RGB. So yeah, don't really care too much about that. Other than that, of course, we have a quad-core CPU, 2 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, and 256 megabytes of flash storage. And we have 4 1 gigabit LAN. We have one 2.5 or 1 gigabyte WAN port, so you can get up to 2.5 gigabit speed. I only have 1 gigabit here in my house or in my apartment. I won't really saturate that other than the 1 gigabit. And then we get that 2 10 gigabit connections, which is excellent for me personally. I have 2 switches that have a 10 gig uplink port. You can see all the specifications here, of course. Very fast throughput. So we have like 4,804 megabits per second. All of the bands except for 2.4 gigahertz, which is up to 1100, excuse me, and 80 megabits per second. And then, of course, it also backwards compatible with Wi-Fi AC, so Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi N, A, B, and G as well. And we do have the 8 antennas on this one here, and those are permanently attached, which is both a positive and negative. Coming from a GT-AXE16000, this is definitely a positive thing, because that one has issues with the antennas actually stay up, because you have to screw them in and they will just constantly fall down. And if you screw them too tight, you kind of break that little plastic that goes around the little screw. You actually tighten them into the router, so it will just move around, but you will not really tighten that antenna in. And yeah, like I said, very unstable system, and it's been kind of an annoyance ever since I got it. It's been working reliable. If you just set it up and don't touch it at all, then it will just be fine. But if you just move one of the antennas and boom, it will just fall down, and it is very annoying. And I had to super glue some of those plastic shells around those screws on my router as well, just so that I could tighten them all the way in. So yeah, not the best design. So this one has permanently attached antennas, and I believe also a little bit beefier in terms of the actually connection points into the router, which is definitely a thumbs up for me. A little bit ROG logo there. And of course, a little more ROG branding here on the other side, and more information here on the bottom of the box as well. And of course, you can also use this as a mesh system. So if you have multiple of these, you can connect them together. If you have a big house, for instance, I just live in an apartment, so don't really need that for my specific setup, but you can of course use that. I'm not really sure if you can also use earlier models together with this one, AI mesh. I believe you can do so, and you can use the 6 gigahertz frequency between them, or you can use the second 5 gigahertz band between them as well. I've always had issues with the second 5 gigahertz band in my area. I believe there are some radars nearby that constantly is giving me issues. So I will lose connections, and then I will have to use sub channels, and that is just a whole other degradation in speed. So not really able to get full throughput on my 5 GHz second band. So I will just disable that on this one here. And all of my devices that support 6 GHz, I will connect to those instead. So I will just use this as a tri-band router. Like I said, I'm not going to use it as a mesh device. So that's pretty much the box here. Let's just get into it and have a closer look and see what we actually get included. And then of course we also have all this plastic covering the entire box. A little bit wasteful. I'd like to see manufacturers use a little bit less plastic in their packaging material. And I believe we just have to opening up from this orientation here. So I had to remove all the plastic to get it open. Like so, kind of nice. It actually has a little bit of a hinge system here on the back. Kind of a nice little feature. Definitely high quality packaging. And take a look at that beefy router there. I've had a hard time actually finding the dimension from this router here on the internet with the antennas. All the dimensions you see is without the antennas. So only really the router's footprint, but of course the antennas, you have to count for those, and also the height of the antennas when you actually put them up. How high do they actually go? I've not been able to find such information online, so this video will kind of see if I have room for it on my shelf. But yeah, very high gloss plastic here on the top with that ROG logo. Actually, it doesn't look as bad in real life compared to like on images and so on. But let's just get rid of that for now and see what else we get here inside the box. So we do get a LAN cable, and it seems to be shielded as well. So that's kind of nice. Pretty high quality cable. And this is even a category 6 cable. That's pretty nice included. So you can use it with 10 gigabit connection as well. Also get a power adapter. This is actually a little bit smaller than the one that is with my current router from ASUS, and also a little bit different in design. So 19.5 volt and 3.3 amp at 60 watt max. Also curious to see how much power this actually sucks when it is all up and running. So we'll also kind of test that in this video. With my specific unit here, we do get the British or the UK plug, which is a big plug here with a fuse inside. And we also get the European plug, which is the one I am going to use in this video here. So I guess they are selling this one in UK and Europe, and that's pretty much all we do have inside the box. And it's kind of nice not having to screw on all those antennas like on the previous models. That was kind of tedious. Let's just get rid of this box here and have a little bit closer look at the instructions you get included. So you get a VIP member warranty notice. I believe you can register online at ASUS and get like a 3-year warranty. So definitely go and do that, at least if you live in Europe. But you also get this very easy setup guide. In this video, we'll just be using a smartphone and the ASUS app to try and set this one up. See how easy that one will go. You can also get more information there with using the QR code. So VIP member warranty notice. They don't really mention a 3-year warranty, but I believe it is included if you register online. Safety notice or CS statement and safety notice. And I call it a quick start guide here just to go through the router and explain all of the different LEDs and so on in many different languages as well. So you should be pretty much covered wherever you live. So let's take a little bit closer look at the router itself. Of course, you have this nice mirror finish, so you can just check if your hair is all right. And then of course we have those antennas already pre-attached and very beefy actually in feel. Oh, very, very sturdy. If you do this movement on the other router I have, boom, the antenna will just kind of fall off. You have to screw it in place, and yeah, like I said, it just breaks so easily and not really the best design at all. This one definitely feels way better, more beefy, much better joints, or at least my first impressions here. But we still have this kind of spidery look. It almost looks like a spider that is laying upside down. And we also have plastic on all of the antennas for some reason. Why do they want to use so much plastic? It doesn't really make so much sense at all. So let's just get rid of all that. And let's have a close look at the antennas. There seem to be like some air vents right here, and also kind of in the side. I'm not really sure if this is actually active antennas or are they passive antennas. Somebody down in the comments let me know. I haven't really looked into that. Since you only have like 2 angles, so you can take them back so far. You cannot lay them down completely flat or close to flat like you can on the previous models. That's not an issue for me at all. I just keep them like this personally. Of course, depending on what kind of room I actually have. Like I said, they didn't really share the measurements with the antennas on there. So let's just have a look at that right now. So you're looking at like 35.5 centimeters from antenna to antenna. Let's just see if it is the same other way here. So from antenna to antenna, yeah, just around 35 centimeters. And that is the same as around 14 inches. And in terms of the actual height of the router, including the antennas, are you actually looking, if you also include the foot underneath the router, you're looking at close to like 20 centimeters actually. I think that would be fine for me personally. So 19 centimeters if you don't count for the foot. Definitely does take quite a substantial footprint on your desk or on your shelf or wherever you want to put this in your server room. So you have to account for that. I do not believe there's any kind of active cooling inside actually. I believe it's all passively cooled. You can see a relatively big and beefy heatsink in here. You can actually see this on camera, but there's a black, I believe, an aluminium heatsink in here just to cool the CPU. And I'm not really sure if those Wi-Fi antennas or maybe even the 10 gig LAN connections there need some active cooling or passive cooling, excuse me. Left side of the router, more ventilation holes here on that side, as well as the WPS button, which is something I'm always disabling. And you can also control the LEDs from here. So disable that. Those LEDs from here, I'm not really sure if it works compared to like my GT-AXE16000. If I disable the LEDs every time I turn on the router or restart the router, 2.5 gig LAN LED will always be back on. So I ended up just setting a piece of tape over those LEDs in the front. That's so annoying, but you can actually disable it on the router itself. I just had to do so every time I rebooted it. And more ventilation holes here, what I believe is supposed to be the front of the router. And on the left side of the router here, a lot of ventilation holes as well. And on the left corner side of the router, we do have that power button. I really like that this is a physical power button that you can flip up or down. Nice to see a clear indication when it's turned on. Of course, I believe it's downwards there towards that white dot. And of course, DC in is where you will connect that included power adapter. That also comes with an angle plug. A little bit of a strange place to actually have all these connection points, in my opinion. I suppose they don't really have other room for that if they have to include all of these 8 antennas as well. And then of course you have USB 2.0 and also USB 3.0. And you can also connect up USB thumb drive or hard drives, or also 4G and I believe 5G modems as well, if you wanna, of course, use that as your internet provider. And then what is supposed to be the backside here of the router, we do have a reset switch for 1 gigabit LAN connections. And we do have that WAN, which is both a 2.5 gig and also 1 gig LAN connection. And then we have those two 10 gigabit connections. And I believe those are only 10 gigabit. Would have been nice to see a multi-gig so it can support like 2.5 and 5 gigabits as well. But definitely it's a big upgrade from where I'm coming from, where I only have like one 2.5 gigabit connection. So I had to like daisy chain my two switches together and connect one of those switches to my router. This time around, I can connect both of my switches directly to the router. Definitely a much better way of doing that. And yeah, that's pretty much all the way around. Let's have a look at the bottom side. So we do have serial number and MAC addresses and everything over here that I've just covered. And other than that, we do just have a lot of ventilations here on the bottom side. Very nice to see. So you can get a lot of air, and also very big rubber feet. One big one here in the corner, smaller ones here towards the other side. But strangely enough, there is no like rubber feet towards the plug or the power plug or the USB plugs there. I'm not really sure if it's because most of the weight is probably over here because of that big heatsink we looked at just before. So you can see maybe most of the weight is over here, and trying to balance it. Yeah, it feels pretty well balanced actually. So yeah, maybe it's a little bit heavy over here. So that's probably why the big rubber feet is over there, taking most of the weight. And you also see a lot of passively cooled heatsink underneath here. Not really sure if I can get it in the right angle. But yeah, there's definitely a big aluminium heatsink in there as well. So overall, in terms of aesthetics, actually looks a little bit better in real life, I would say. This like glass plastic, they have chosen to like cover the entire front plate here, or top plate of the router almost. Not really a big fan of that. And there's also a little bit of protection on here. I will keep that on for now. But of course you can peel that off and you will see even more high gloss mirror finish that will just scratch up so easily. And yeah, fingerprints and dust will just accumulate there. So looks kind of nice right out of the box, but in a few years time, it'll probably look a little bit dusty and a little bit fingerprinty. But man, so nice. Very, very strong antennas. You can see definitely holds its position just so nice. Coming from the GT-AXE16000, those antennas were just not really that well designed. So the only thing really left to do is try to plug it in. And of course, let's use a power meter here. Remove those zip ties or wire ties here. Connect the power cable to the power brick. This end of the cable here into the power socket. And let's just connect up LAN first, or WAN rather. This one is a 1 gig connection, but it's going through my other router, ASUS router, GT-AXE16000. So maybe speed will be a little bit slower because it's going through another router and firewall and everything. But let's just try and plug it in here and see what kind of throughput we can get through my smartphones here, and try to set it up using my smartphones as well. So at least now we have internet connection. And last thing, of course, is just to connect to power, just like so. And already there you can see, let me just turn off the light. That's super nice RGB. You can kind of see the wattage we are using over here. Not really all that bad actually. I would have thought it was more than that. Maybe like above the 10 wattage, but of course we have not really started up just yet. But yeah, if you're into RGB and those kind of 3D haloing effect there, I don't know if you can actually pick this up on camera, but you get a little bit of a 3D effect from that lighting. You can see the RGB or the LED lights actually coming from this side here and light through over the acrylic plastic. Actually not as distasteful as I would have like feared. Not something I will turn on because yeah, I'll just throw this router on a shelf, so I will not really see it anyways. But if I was into all that gaming aesthetics, I wouldn't really mind this too much. And I kind of like the little more subtle like LEDs over here to indicate what kind of Wi-Fi signal is turned on. You can see there is a red LED indicating that there's no WAN or internet right now. This actually is a little more subtle compared to the router I have right now, where the LEDs are in the front and they are blue LEDs and constantly blinking. I think this is going to be a little more subtle, so won't really be as blinding. So maybe I don't really need to tape something over that. And of course you can go to the App Store and download the ASUS Router app. Quite a good app actually. You can set up most within this app, if not everything. And you can see my current network here is the GT-AXE11000. I have 48 devices connected right now, but let's just try and add another one. So configure a new router. I do apologize, this is in my native language, but let me just, in fact, turn on the light again, and let's just go through the configuration here. So select what type of router we have. Of course, we have that RT or GT series of router. We need to grant access to my location just while using the app. And then we see the router right here. I also have MAC addresses. Of course, I will have to censor those. Let's just click on it. Connecting to ASUS 04. Make sure you have connected the WAN port. I do have connected WAN port, but no internet. Not really sure why. We just need to set it up first. Okay, that was pretty easy. Let's just get going. So checking the internet status, internet connection. We still have a red internet LED down here. Of course, I need to set it up using my specific internet provider. I do have a static IP address and so on, so I probably have to set it up manually. I also have that in my other router, so let me just do that. Next step, set up Wi-Fi, and of course you can set not only Wi-Fi name but also Wi-Fi password for each specific channels. So of course you have 4 in total, one 2.4, 2 5 GHz, and that 6 GHz. So I have made a password for my Wi-Fi 6E network, or 6 GHz frequency. I'm not really sure why I cannot forward. Maybe I have to actually set a password for each of them. Let's just try that. So yeah, you have to set a name and a password for each of the different bands. And once you're done so, just click next. And then of course set a username and a password for the router itself, whatever you want to go and administrate it, both through the phone but also using the web interface. And once you've done that, let's just wait and see what actually will happen, but should hopefully set up internet access. Still getting a red LED down here. So setting up my network. Might have to go in and configure my internet service provider afterwards. I couldn't really set that up during the setup process. I only had like a predefined list of internet service providers, but let's just see what actually happens. And you can see here right now, the internet logo is actually now white. I guess that is because we have access to the internet. And I suppose we also see like a firmware update waiting for us, like most modern devices nowadays. But you can also see here on the power meter that we actually are drawing around 16, 17 wattage setting up this device. So next step is to go to Wi-Fi settings and select this router. So I guess it will just want me to set it up using 2.4 GHz frequency, because it knows like all devices should support that, but yeah, it definitely is setting something up now. Also drawing around that 16 watt of power. I'm interested to see how much power it will suck when we have done setting it up and just using it as a normal router. Okay, now it seems to be set up and you can see all of my different networks here. I'll just of course censor that in this video, but you can see the name and the password. Let's just hit done. And now we're actually inside the router, but let's go back to Wi-Fi and see if we can actually find that. I kind of forgot that my Samsung Galaxy S22, I don't believe it does support 6E, because if you can see here, my S22 Ultra, it finds the 6E network right out of the bat there. So let's just connect through this one here right now. And we have a success here, connected to Wi-Fi 6E using my S22 Ultra. So let's just right out the bat try and do a speed test. Like I said, I have a 1 gig connection, but I'm going through another router, so I'm not really sure if that will affect its overall performance. The wattage right now is also still around the 60 watt-ish, or 16 watt, excuse me. Let's just run the speed test. You can see up here, we are connected to 6E Wi-Fi, and that is definitely not the most impressive in terms of speed, but I don't think I can actually get closer antenna-wise than I am right now. Basically right in the middle of the router with 6 antennas on each side of the phone. But in terms of speed, I think it's pretty close to what I actually got with Wi-Fi 6. I don't think I will actually achieve higher speed with Wi-Fi 6, but the fact that I can use a separate band for those devices is just something that is going to help out a little bit here in my area. Oh, whoa. We actually see close to a gig connection right now. That is very impressive. Of course, very ideal conditions right now, but you can see there. Wow. I've never seen Wi-Fi this fast ever before. That's definitely fast. That's pretty much in line with what I would expect from like a 1 gig connection, a 1 gig LAN connection, or wired connection rather. Yeah, 930 megabits per second. Not slow by any stretch of the imagination. Wow, that's just insane. Let's just try the Wi-Fi 6 speeds on this device. Back to my S22 and connect it through the first Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz network and see what kind of speed we can achieve there. If we can actually get up to, whoa, that's pretty insane. So we actually get close to a gig connection there as well. So yeah, like I said, I don't expect actually to get much faster throughput from Wi-Fi 6E, but just being able to have that separate band that not really that many people are using in my area right now. Definitely going to help out a little bit. Can be a little cluttered in the 5 gigahertz range, specifically the second band where you're kind of sharing the bandwidth with the radars in the area. But second time around, we are close to like 900 megabits per second down and actually achieves more than 900 megabits per second up. Not really seeing much faster connection. Actually, we see a little bit faster in terms of uplink connection, upload connection, the 6 Wi-Fi compared to the 6E, but you can see, man, 6E, I've never seen this fast connection before. Of course, we are extremely close to the router, basically inside the router right now on the antenna, so yeah, can't really get much better than this, but man, this is very impressive. This is definitely LAN connection-ish speed-wise. So the app just asked me if I want to activate remote connection. I do kind of like that when I'm not near the router. Of course, on my local network, I can still get in and manage the router. But now you can, of course, see here, we have the RGB light. I think it's kind of trying to imitate what it would look like. This is the wavy RGB. We have the breathing RGB as well, so you can kind of make this breathing look. Let me just turn off the light again, actually. So you can have breathe, you can have wave. Just take a few seconds. I'm not really sure how much wavy that actually is. Merkise, I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. So it just turns them on and off in the direction there. And then you of course have static. So you can just have one color. And how good is it actually to reproduce a color? So red looks a little more purpley to me. What about blue? Like dark blue there. It looks a little more light blue. Green, that's actually okay green there. And yellow and back to red. Okay, you can get that full red if you go all the way to the left. Standard value is more like the purpley look. But of course, the best feature of all, you can just disable it all together, which is definitely something I am going to do. Let's just see what kind of wattage it actually uses with this LED on. So you can see it goes up to around 17 wattage with LEDs on, RGB on. Disabling it, you'll actually save 2 wattage of power. So yeah, definitely in my opinion, not worth it, but of course your mileage may vary. Let's just leave the RGB on, but just know you can actually save 2 wattage of power. And right now we're around the 17 wattage. So it seemed to be right around there when you're actually just idling, but that was the RGB. But we actually do have more settings here that you kind of have to press the little arrow. So we have graduating, development, and we also have rainbow effect. So actually quite a few effects, but you cannot really sync it up with other ROG devices. But if you're into RGB, I would believe this is actually pretty decent. Let's just go back to the wavy one there, which was the default one. Then of course you can swipe between the RGB and of course speed in real time. You can monitor that through the app as well. Can be very useful. You can see all the devices connected. Right now I only have 2 devices, of course this phone and my S22 Ultra as well. You can also see there is actually a newer firmware available. No surprise there. AI mesh. Of course we only have this device here connected. But if of course you have multiple of these devices connected together, you can set it up here as well. Then you go to the inside, see if there's anything you need to take a note of with this router. So firmware update, of course, you can go and register your product. More safe connection, add a family member, security settings, or inside, you can turn it on or off. I do recommend having this one on, actually. It does block some of those spammy or bad websites, so definitely worth turning on, and also give you notifications and tips on how to secure your router best way you can. Family member or family, you can have a filter. If you have kids living with you, you can of course manage the internet connection and block specific sites and so on. Fast internet configuration, just if you want to get up and running fast. AI mesh setting, of course, if you want to set up a mesh network, you can do through here the app as well. AI protect, you can of course scan and see if there's anything recommended from the router. So you can enable this to block the website that will damage you, two-way IPS, and all kinds of other stuff and recommendations that you can set up on this router. Definitely go and check that out. Instant ward, where you can configure your VPN. So of course you can set up your VPN or this one as a VPN server. You can diagnostic the network and traffic diagnostics as well. Can be very useful actually. Parents control, of course, set up, control your kids' devices, what kind of websites they can visit. Gaming, so we have the open net, and you can also set it to a mobile gaming setting. I'm not really sure that's something I will use. Quality of service, of course. I tend to just leave that off because I have a 1 gig connection. I don't really need that in my home. But of course, if you don't have as fast as a connection, you can set quality of service and have some devices prioritized over other devices, for instance, streaming devices and so on, gaming devices. You can limit your throughput, and you can also go in here and test the internet connection. And you can test it, of course, on the router itself. You can see pretty much actually the same kind of speed that I was getting through a Wi-Fi 6E through this router here. So there's a little, of course, speed lost going through another router and internet service provider modem as well. But this is pretty close to what I can expect here in my home. Then, of course, we have USB management. You can set up an SFTP, Samba, and you can also eject your USB devices here. So you can kind of use this as a little NAS server. Not something I would recommend personally, because you don't have any kind of redundancy. So get a proper NAS server if you can, but definitely is a nice little added thing you can use maybe as a time machine for your Mac devices or a backup device for your Windows computer. That way, I think it would be actually quite nice. Then, of course, you have Wi-Fi. You can share your Wi-Fi, wireless settings, Wi-Fi blacklist, and Wi-Fi eco mode as well. So it will lower the efficiency and data speed to save a little bit of energy. Could be useful. Let's try and enable it actually and see. It will go down in power usage. Oh, we actually went down a little bit there. What is it? Like 3 wattage, 4 wattage or something like that. But at the cost, of course, of speed and bandwidth. So 13.2. Let's just enable or disable it again. And let's just see what kind of savings we actually had. So now we're up to like 15. And we're saving a few extra wattage as well. So if you disable the RGB and disable or enable eco mode, you could potentially save at least maybe 5 wattage of power, which is definitely something to consider. And then we have LAN connection. So you can set IP binding here if you want to use that through the app as well. WAN, of course, you can go and set up WAN using the app. And this is also where you can route your port through your router, DSN or DNS settings, or you can also set up double WAN here if you have like 2 internet service providers. You can switch between the 2, or have a 4G modem connected. You can switch between that and the LAN connection. You can also connect Alexa and also Google Assistant. Router settings, or router information rather. So where you get all information about your router. System monitoring here as well. So you can see what kind of power usage you have on your CPUs. There's a quad-core CPU in here, and we have the 2 gigabytes of RAM. Currently I'm only using like 30% of that. Then we have like firmware update. Definitely recommend and go in and update the firmware. One of the first things I'm going to do when I'm done with this video here, definitely updating the firmware. System settings, all the settings you have related to your system. You can also reboot and set factory default here. You can set a schedule, restart, time zone, remote connection and everything from here. What you will call the router as well. System notifications, definitely something I have turned on. I kind of like getting notified when there's a new device connected, so I know it's something that I have connected to the router. So I'll get a smartphone pop-up notification. And network tools, so you have wake on LAN as well. Very useful actually when you are not at home. If you want to wake up one of your NAS servers, for instance, this is what I use it for. I can just remotely wake those up and get into using them remotely. Account connection, so you can log into your ASUS account as well. And we also have some related apps that you can go and download, of course, from the App Store. I'm not really sure if all these apps are available on Android and iOS, but I believe most of them are. And then we're back home here, but you also have a little bit information up here. You can click on the little sandwich button up there and you can see what kind of router you're connected to. Choose the theme for your device. There's few themes there. OLED black, kind of nice. And then of course you can also log into your ASUS account and everything from there. About ASUS support and frequently asked question, and visit the GUI if you want to go through the internet portal or internet website there. Log into your router that way. You can do so as well. So that's pretty much the unboxing and setup of this router here. Let me just take my old router down and let's kind of compare a little bit in sizing if you are choosing between like a older GT-AXE16000 and this one here. So my good old trusty AX11000. This antenna, like I talked about, is kind of screwed in place, but with this plastic around, you can see this one here will just keep turning around because it's kind of broke. Let's see if we can find where it actually broke. Yeah, you can see there it's actually split with the plastic around it, so I cannot really screw it on and off. It's just there, but very easy to get these antenna to actually fall down. See, this one is a great example of that. And now we'll just dangle around there. You kind of have to screw it on again, and now you cannot screw it on totally because the plastic around the screw there is just broke again. As you can see, it's actually split right there. But anyways, that's just the gripe. I have this one here, and like I said, I kind of super glued this one in place because I broke it right here in the joint. So it's not really held together all that well. I'm not really sure if it actually makes proper connection. The AXE16000 is not that much bigger in terms of its footprint, width and height. It is a little bit thicker in terms of its height, like the base station itself. Yeah, in terms of the antennas, I'm not really sure it actually is much bigger. It just looks so much beefier. Antennas definitely do stick out just ever so slightly more compared to this one here. Compare them together here. I'm not really sure if you can see this on camera, but the antennas from bottom to top here is definitely a little bit shorter on the AX11000. So this one is just around 18 centimeters if you count for the rubber feet underneath to the top of the antenna, and probably around 32 centimeters if you go from antenna to antenna in terms of it width. The AXE16000 is a few centimeters wider and also maybe a centimeter and a half taller if you count for the antennas as well. So I think it will actually be fine on top of my shelf. But anyways, that's been pretty much all I had for this video here. Just unboxing and setting up the ASUS AXE16000. If there's any questions, of course, leave them down in the comment field below. I'll maybe make a follow-up video in the future, just talking about my experience using this router here, if I will recommend it to anybody else. And I can, of course, share some affiliate link down in the description below if you're interested in this router here. But else, that's pretty much all I have for this video. I hope to see you again in a future one. Until then, take care.